welcome to our podcast. So I'm Amanda.
I'm Kayla.
I'm Valeria.
And we are
Feeding the Future.
So in this podcast, we're going to be talking about how climate change is changing the way we produce our food, its nutrition, and even our own bodies.
In this episode, we're going to focus on a few of the ways these rising temperatures, shifting weather patterns, and environmental stressors affect the foods we grow, the nutrients they contain, and ultimately our health and resilience. Tune in as we review research elaborating more on these topics.
Whether you are interested in food, health, or the environment, this talk will open your eyes to a basic web that links climate change, what we eat, and how it all responds within our bodies. So let's dive in.
Let me start off with a brief overview. As the climate is changing, so is the growth and production of our foods. The increasing temperatures, heightened droughts, and unpredictable weather all have an impact on crop production and the quality ultimately of how the food is being produced.
Actually, did you know that in some places, staple foods become increasingly difficult to grow? And when they do grow, it is found to be even less nutritious than before.
Yeah, so going more in depth on that, for example, rising atmospheric carbon dioxide has been shown to lower the intake of critical nutrients like protein, iron, and zinc in wheat and rice, the two most consumed staple plants. All these little changes slowly push us toward a remade diet.
No matter how much we hate to hear it, climate change is negatively affecting our nutrition.
Well, that's what I want to ask you. How does that even work? I mean, climate has to do with temperature, not food.
I used to think the same thing. But how it works is that as climate change worsens over time, which unfortunately it is, global temperature and precipitation patterns are changing. Climate change causes extreme weather events like floods, heat waves, and droughts, which messes with the growing season for organic foods. It affects the rate at which organic food grows.
Okay, so let me stop you there. Are there any studies that have been published about this?
Yes, a study published by an organization named Nature Climate Change found that for every 1 degree rise Celsius in global temperature, major crops like wheat could decline by 6 to 10%.
Okay, I'm still a little lost. What exactly do you mean by that?
Well, in easier terms, as climate change worsens over time, carbon dioxide increases, which decreases the concentrations of proteins and nutrients. How it works is as carbon dioxide rises, plants grow at a faster rate without the nutrients and vitamins being able to keep up.
So can you tell me how that's going to be important?
Yes, it is important to consider moving forward. It may not be a big deal to us, but to families living in poverty, as well as older adults, they're going to be affected way more than we are. The World Health Organization states that specifically older adults require more nutrients like fiber, protein, and certain vitamins.
That sounds terrible. So what are we supposed to do about this, especially the families living in poverty?
Even though there's not much we can do right now to prevent climate change's effect on our nutrition, we can go ahead and make a change today by focusing on an organic diet and encouraging others to do the same. We need to make our nutrition a priority.
So for the audience to kind of more understand about that, can you give some examples?
Yes, for example, switching foods we eat daily like bread and pasta to more organic options. We can also go the extra mile and prioritize donating organic foods to families living in poverty. By doing this, we can make a difference in the economy. But it is even more difficult to prevent the rise in carbon. Val, can you talk a little bit more about carbon dioxide and its effects on crops? Because I'm still a little confused on how exactly the rise of carbon negatively affects crop growth.
Yeah, so it's quite alarming, really. Growing concentrations of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere are beginning to impact the nutritional quality of essential crops such as wheat and rice. You might assume that increased carbon dioxide would simply enhance plant growth, correct?
Correct. It does make sense that it can be used as an enhancer.
And it does. Plants generate more biomass and carbohydrates, but the downside is the levels of essential nutrients such as protein, iron, and zinc usually. Fundamentally, these plants focus on accumulating more sugars and starches, resulting in diminished amounts of these vital nutrients. This carries significant consequences, particularly for individuals who depend on rice and wheat as their primary food sources.
So what happens now when the crops lose nutritional value?
Well, if these crops lose their nutritional value, it may lead to nutrient deficiencies that impact millions globally. It's a critical problem when you think about how many people worldwide rely on these for their well-being. Now that we've gone into depth about how climate change affects our nutrition and the way crops grow, let us go into how it affects the way our bodies and the changing of our diets due to climate change.
I'll take over from here. So, changing temperatures and altered weather patterns also make their contribution to food safety concerns, putting additional burdens on the immune and digestive systems of the human organs. Warmer temperatures and extreme weather can enhance the growth of foodborne pathogens.
Of course, meaning that due to these higher temperatures, bacteria, mold, and parasites are more prone to be exposed to these foods.
Correct. And if ingested, contaminated food may cause gastrointestinal problems, food poisoning, or even the development of chronic infections, which the human body is less able to fight, particularly in the most disadvantaged parts of the world. Climate change forms part of a greater background of psychosocial and environmental stressors. Because of climate change, indirect impacts on nutrition and digestion occur.
I'm getting anxiety just talking about this.
And anxiety and uncertainty, being the factors associated with climate change, can turn on the stress response in the human body. It will affect appetite, digestion, and absorption of nutrients. People who are constantly stressed may have heightened desires for sweet and fatty foods that contribute to metabolic disorders like obesity and diabetes.
Wait, what? I actually had no idea, but that would make sense. I find myself binge eating whenever I'm stressed, to be honest.
Yes. Now, this means that it influences the change in body responses to diets, which are being increasingly altered due to availability, quality, and safety of food, while influencing in return those aspects which determine environmental stressors on metabolism, digestion, and just the overall health. While some populations may be able to adapt much easier due to access to some resources, others may find themselves facing greater challenges when it comes to maintaining their diet and having good health.
After discussing how climate change affects food production, nutrition, and the human body's response to changing diets, let's recap.
My intention wasn't to scare you with this information and make you think you're going to die tomorrow if you don't switch to organic foods today, but to make you aware that what you fuel your bodies with matters, especially if climate change worsens over time.
Ultimately, assuring the food for the people of the world will require innovation, collaboration, and a dedication to solving both the ecological and nutritional problems. This is what calls for investment in environmentally friendly methods of farming, plant improvement for nutritional value, and improvement in food distribution to ensure access by all people to nutritional food.
Thank you again for listening to our podcast. We hope you leave here with a better understanding of how climate change affects our food production, nutrition, and our bodies. See you next time on
Feeding the Future.